Greetings, friends, and Firebirds fans, and welcome to the Desert Suns Fire and Ice podcast presented by Desert Willow Golf Resort. Coming to you from Palm Desert, California, a mere back against the wall scenario, parentheses, again. That's how far away we are from the Birds' home ice of Acrisure Arena. I'm your host, Judd Spicer. Fourth season of Coachella Valley Firebirds hockey. Fourth season of Fire and Ice. Fourth season in the playoffs. And third time in as many series in this version of CV that the Birds got to get it done again. Stave off elimination. Did it twice in the first round against Bakersfield. Did it twice in the second round against Ontario, and now got to do it twice again. This time in the Pacific Division Finals against a very good Colorado Eagles team. Here to break down as much, we'll get to it shortly. Special Mid-Series Media Roundtable episode. Yours truly going to be joined by some familiar faces, or at least for this audio medium, voices. Shad Powers, Andrew John from the Desert Sun going to be joining us here shortly. Also very enthused to welcome Kevin McGlue. He is not only the VP of Communications and Broadcasting, there is an ampersand in there. Additionally, if not perhaps moreover, at least on game days, Kevin also the voice of the Eagles, doing a play-by-play for Colorado. Looking forward to this media roundtable coming up shortly. In the interim, let us recognize those who make this show go. The Desert Sun newspaper. Been informing our valley for nearly a century now, founded back in 1927. Get all your local news, sports, festival, dining, politics, event, and Firebirds information. Oh, let's not forget the Coachella Valley Lakers. You can get that too at desertsun.com, or heck, just go get yourself a physical, tangible, handheld newspaper. Desert Willow Golf Resort. Also right here in sunny Palm Desert, California, home to the Mountain View and Fire Cliff courses, respectively. One of the best municipal, one of the best public golf facilities west of the Mississippi, undoubtedly. Look up those 36 holes online at desertwillow.com. Great time, by the way, to be teeing it up over at DW. Love these shoulder seasons. We've had some great weather. Very, very temperate for the most part. Desert Willow also home to the awesome and on-site Palm Desert Golf Academy. Again, you can check that out online at desertwillow.com. Be mindful, by the way, when you're making tee times at DW for this week, both the Mountain View and Firecliff courses, playing host to the women's D3 National Championship. Emory University, I believe, is the favorite heading in, but also some strong suitors. NYU, Carnegie Mellon, they're playing both courses I just mentioned. First time, by the way, that the D3 Women's National Championship has been at a host site west of Texas. So be mindful again this week when making those tee times over at the Mountain View and Firecliff courses. Otherwise, tee it up, tee away. By the way, love the good putt-to-puck segue. You tee it up over at DW and then just 1.5 miles away to the Birds' home ice of Acrisure Arena. All right, friends, let's get to both the nitty and the gritty in this Firebirds Freeze Frame segment. Of course, Firebirds Freeze Frame has a couple great new sponsors for this fourth season of CV hockey, because ice action, it's not limited to Acrisure alone. Hockey fans who seeking some pregame drinks, post-game toasts, you need only look up to the high desert, where our Firebirds friends at both the 29 Palms Beer Company and the Ground Squirrel, that's GRND-SQRL. They're both serving up some awesome eats and incredible beers in downtown 29 Palms. Ground Squirrel, of course, awesome gastropub style scratch-made menu. They match that with a rotating list of craft beers. Those seeking a potent power play, hey, you skate it right on down the street, of course, to 29 Palms Beer Company. They're brewing up their own phenomenal beers right on site, and wait for it, they are televising every Firebirds playoff game and regular season game. They're doing it right now. Every game, home or away. Great place to kick up your feet, get a handcrafted beer right on site, and watch the Birds versus the Eagles in this third round of the Calder Cup playoffs. Look, you're a local seeking a fun new scene. Once it does get hot, you're going to want to cool off. Maybe you're a desert guest. You're up there exploring Joshua Tree, Pioneer Town. Look, you might be celebrating a Birds win, perhaps drowning your sorrows like we did after Game 3, after a tough loss. You lace up the hospitality in 29 Palms, where both the Ground Squirrel and the 29 Palms Beer Company, those are proving your high desert hockey homes. All right, dudes. As mentioned, proverbial backs against the wall again. Birds down 1-2 in this Pacific Division of Finals series versus the Colorado Eagles. Been here before. Been here against the Eagles before. That was a few years back. More recently, don't need to look too deep in that rear view. I reiterate, Birds were down 0-1 in the first round against Bakersfield, best of 3. Got it done winning 2 straight. Birds were down in round 2 versus the first place Ontario Reign, the I-10 rivals. Needed to win a couple back-to-back to advance, play onward. They got it done. And now CV needs to do it a third consecutive time. They will attempt to extend the series, keep the season alive this Wednesday night at Colorado Blue Arena. You're my boy, Blue. We need you to be our boy because the boys need to win. Forcing deciding Game 5 this Wednesday night. Birds at Colorado. That is a 6:05 Pacific time puck drop. And then the proverbial asterisk. If needed, if hopefully needed, I think we can editorialize a deciding Game 5 would take place in Colorado, in Loveland, at Blue, my boy Blue. We need you to win. We need you to be our boy. In Games 4 and 5 this Friday, CV at Colorado would also be a 6:05. Need to ask Kevin McGlue. Notice that throughout the years, not just this season, throughout the years, there's always the 05 suffix on the clock for that mountain time taking place in Colorado. Need to ask why that is. There's got to be some reason. That is the schedule as it stands. Interesting series to date. It's been competitive as anticipated, although the scoring certainly would suggest a more polarizing series of outcomes. Birds, of course, lost that first game, got shut out 3-0 at Acrisure Arena last week. Game 2, the Birds came back, shutout of their own, 4-0. Great game, couple goals for J.R. Avon to even the series at 1. Game 3 was a very good-looking hockey game. Birds got on the board early. Leighton rode Shorty to give the Birds an early lead. Colorado tied it in the second, and things just kind of fell apart for CV, at least defensively from there. It gave up a lot of pucks in our own zone. Colorado, rather, ended up running away with that with a 4-1 win. Per the players, thus far throughout the postseason, OFM, Oscar Fisker Molgaard, continues to lead both the Birds and the AHL in goals and scoring throughout these playoffs. 11 points, respectively, 7 goals paired with 4 assists. He is tied, by the way, for that league lead in goals and playoff goals with J.R. Avon, the aforementioned J.R. Avon, 7 goals, really availing himself quite well. Both of those gentlemen are throughout these Calder Cup playoffs. Sandwiched in between Oscar's 11 points and J.R.'s 8. Yanni Newman, 9 points throughout these Calder Cup playoffs, 3 goals paired with a team-high 6 assists. Jagger Firkus also with 8 points in these playoffs. And the Rotor also having himself a great season and a great second season, that meaning the playoffs, with 7 points. And again, got the Shorty to get the Birds on the board first in the eventual Game 3 loss. In net, Nike Coco continues to have himself a very solid postseason for the Firebirds. Now a cumulative record through the Birds' 11 playoff games of 6-5, goals against of 2.55, and a save percentage of .908. On the opposite side of the Nets, Trent Miner, man, he has had himself an outstanding playoffs. Got to give the pat on the back proverbially when it is due. Trent now 7-2 in these playoffs. 1.18, not a misprint there, Firebirds friends. 1.18 goals against and a save percentage, also not a misprint. This is what the stats bear out. Save percentage of .950 for Trent. Oh, by the way, through those 9 starts in the playoffs for the Colorado Eagles, 4 shutouts. Not a real shocker, by the way, for Trent Miner. He played 4 games. God, the Colorado, man, they got some serious goaltending depth. He's played 4 games, by the way, in the regular season for the Avalanche. He went 1-0-3 in the NHL this year with a 2.03 goals against, doing that in the NHL. Oh, and he had 1 shutout. Colorado showing their scoring depth throughout these playoffs, something that we were certainly mindful of, if not concerned about. They've received scoring from 15 different players throughout their 9 playoff games, including multiple goals from 9. Matching that up with Coachella Valley, we've got goal contributions in our 11 games from 11 different players, including multi goal efforts throughout these playoffs from 7 different dudes. More specifically for this series, for the specific division final series, mentioned the 2 goals from J.R. Avon in the Game 2 win. Leighton Road got his lone goal of this series shorthanded in the Game 3 loss. Colorado has received a couple of goals from T.J. Hughes, matched 3 assists thus far through the series, while Chase Bradley has 2 goals to complement his 4 total points in the series. All right, going to dig into these numbers, going to dig into these stats, going to dig into this playoff series, going to dig into this analysis and much, much more. That's going to wrap up the Firebirds Freeze Frame segment. Thanks again to the Ground Squirrel and 29 Palms Beer Company. And let us baton pass, let us segue to this mid-series, media roundtable. Yours truly, Shad Powers and John from the Desert Sun. Visiting us from Colorado, Kevin McGlue. All right, Firebirds friends, as prefaced, Cavalcade of Stars. Great mind melt we've got for this special playoff edition mid-series media roundtable. Start with the reintroductions. Our friends from the Desert Sun newspaper, reporter Andrew John, and Shad Powers. He is the sports and leisure editor. Also very pleased to welcome, coming to us from Colorado, where he is the VP of Communications and Broadcasting. He is the play-by-play voice. They call him the adhesive, which keeps the Eagles together. Kevin McGlue. Hello, Kevin. Thank you for joining us, man.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate being on.
We're also inclined to like you because on your Twitter handle, you have Steve Martin as the jerk as your background photo.
Navin Johnson is he's a hero of mine.
Navin R. Johnson. We could do an entirely different show on Navin and Carl Reiner, but we should probably stick on the ice for this episode because there's much to discuss. I'm not gonna. I don't like to say it's an emergency episode, but it is needed and it is timely as the Birds' wings against the wall yet again for the 3rd time in this mini series. Needed to win back-to-backs to stave off elimination. Move onward. Both squads looking, of course, to get to those Western Conference Finals, which currently would look like a battle with the howling Chicago Wolves. Won a couple of games at Grand Rapids. That series now moves back to Chicago. But I digress. Kevin, I'd be a bad host if I didn't let you start first. That's what my mom would say. You got to be a good host and a good guest. Let's just start with this, gents. Your general emotional state through 3 games of this series. We're, of course, sticking to hockey now, not your personal life.
I guess from my perspective, it's been a really, really entertaining series. 2 very good teams, 2 teams that I think have really outstanding goaltending. And it's, to me, a really defining of what this Pacific Division is all about. I personally think this is the toughest division to get out of in the American Hockey League. I just, you go top to bottom, and anybody has a chance to get hot. Anybody has a chance to go on a run and get themselves potentially all the way to the Calder Cup final. So, I think that this has been a series that's been interesting in the fact that at least the last 2 games, you've had both teams with good jump in the first period. You've had 2 teams that have gone 2 straight periods in the first and second, generating a lot of good chances. Goaltenders coming up big, and then all of a sudden, the 3rd period has really been the defining period in both Game 2 and Game 3. I think you figured out a series and you figured out 2 teams, so you can pretty much bank on the fact that Game 4 will probably be completely different. It'll probably be a track meet from the first period on, but I think it's been a good showcase of what this division is all about, and the fact that there is some just outstanding hockey that's been played for 72 games in the regular season and now into the postseason. And these are the 2 best teams right now remaining in the playoffs out of this division. And I think whoever wins this series has a very realistic chance to do something special moving forward.
Shad Powers will pass the baton to you. Kevin answered that entire question. This is an audio medium, but with a very sanguine look on his face. So as well he should. Up 2-1 with the rest of the series in Colorado. Shad Powers, looking at it from the Firebirds lens, are you as hopeful?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's you'd rather be ahead 2-1 than down 2-1, but like Kevin said, and he's right. This whole season, it's just been a lot of parity in the Pacific Division, and this series has been like that. If you just look at the final scores, it looks kind of like three lopsided games, but as we know, all three games were very much in doubt heading into the third period, either tied or, something close to that. So it's been um, an entertaining series in that regard, in that like it's almost like, wake me up when the third period starts. That's when all the action's been happening. Um, but uh, but yeah, if you're the Firebirds, of course, the solace that you can lean on is that you've already done this twice. The bad part is you don't want to be putting yourself into this position all the time. But to backs against the walls when they played their best. So, in that regard, there's something to be still feel like there's some reason to have confidence there. But certainly, I've been very impressed with Colorado. I think what's been impressive to me the most is how quickly they sort of counterattack. That's something that I didn't see a lot from Ontario or Bakersfield or from ourselves even during the year. So I like that about Colorado. You think, all of a sudden it feels like a play where you're on the right foot, and then all of a sudden they've turned around and going the other way, and it's in the back of the net. So goaltending's been amazing in both ways. So I don't know. It just seems still feels like a toss up of a series, but to win two straight games in Colorado is going to be a tall task.
Andrew John coming off a game three that was particularly tight for just about 40 minutes, and then the wheels kind of came off for the Birds. So a little sullen here for a day or two in the desert proper, but as we head into game four, your general emotional state.
As someone who would love to see the Firebirds continue their season, it is a little difficult going into this game because Colorado has been so solid. But as mentioned previously, games have all been tight, and the Firebirds haven't lost back-to-back games in this postseason. So they've also won a few times already in Colorado this year, and they've had their backs against the wall several times in this postseason. So I think there's reason for optimism if you are someone who has a rooting interest in the Firebirds. There's reason to believe that this thing can at least go 5 games. Um, that being said, yeah, I mean, this is obviously a very tough team that the Firebirds are playing. Colorado is solid. I was actually just kind of looking at the rosters, and Colorado has like 13 guys that were born in the 1990s, and the Firebirds have 5. So the age difference is quite stark, and I think that shows itself in the playoffs. So I think that for the series, you got to be feeling really good if you're an Eagles fan. But if you're a Firebirds fan, you know that the Firebirds have what it takes to win at least game 4 and force a game 5.
Kevin, we'll turn it back to you. There's a lot of things to choose from, as the gentleman referenced. Colorado has played particularly well in this series in a lot of different facets, but if there's one that you want to point out that has you particularly hopeful that the Eagles will fly onward, what might that be?
You know what? And again, I think I'd preface the whole thing by saying that there's nobody that's taken this for granted that this thing's going to get wrapped up, and it's going to get wrapped up in Game 4, and that this is going to be a done deal. I think everybody's very respectful of the fact that this is a very accomplished Coachella Valley team. It's a team that's been in this situation before, not only this season, but has had so much success in the past, and built a really impressive winning tradition in a short amount of time. But this season, to see that they've faced this situation now for a fifth time, it's kind of old hat to them. So I think everybody is very mindful of that and very very respectful of what they've done so far. But as far as what I think you've been impressed with Colorado, at least from my end, is limiting the shot volume, in knowing that if you can get your netminder the lane to see the puck, and facing, let's say, an average of which they're right around 24 shots against per game. Typically, whether it's the regular season or the playoffs, you're probably going to put yourself in a pretty good spot to try to walk away with the result you're looking for. I don't think this is an Eagles team that, while they do have great speed and transition, some really good offensive weapons, that this isn't a team that necessarily wants to get into a track meet, that wants to get into a 5-4, 6-5 type of game. I think it's a team that, as Shad had mentioned, you try to play strong defensive play in your own zone, turn the puck around, head up the ice, see what you can create with some of that speed. But to me, it's been in the defensive zone, and really it's a 200-foot game. They have a great forecheck, and it starts all the way down on the other end. Just trying to keep the shot volume down, try to limit some of those big-time chances, which we've seen J.R. Avon take advantage of, and Edward Chalet, and there are going to be some of those that are going to be peppered in with those 24 shots. But if they can hover around those marks, I think traditionally it puts you in a good spot to set yourself up for when you get your chances and you capitalize. You're probably going to like the result at the end of the day. So for me, it's a defensive play, not just from your D-core, but starting with your forwards down in the forecheck and trying to win battles along the walls.
Those battles were undoubtedly won in a very succinct flash of time in game three. Shad Powers, turn it back to you from the Birds' vantage, from our nest. What has you particularly hopeful, even though the Birds are down 1-2?
Well, like aside from what we've all been talking about, how they've been in this situation and almost seem to relish it in a way when you hear them talk after the game. Um, of course, there's that confidence of having been there before and having won in Colorado before recently at the end of the season. Um, I'm encouraged by Nike Coco, the goalie. He, we were a little dubious about him heading into the playoffs, to be honest. I think it's fair to say he did not have a stellar finish to the season, I wouldn't say. But in game two, naturally, I thought was his best game, but he just looked extra sharp, kind of like the Coco we've seen in years past. Um, yes, the Eagles scored four in the most recent game, but I didn't put a lot of those on his shoulders entirely. So that kind of gave me some confidence. I haven't seen him play a game as great as he played in game two in a long time. So the fact that that's out there for him to showcase again, knowing that he can do that, gave me a little more confidence than I had coming in. But I really agree with what Kevin said. That's what's so impressive about Colorado is they really limit the grade A chances. Even when you're controlling the puck in the offensive zone, it's hard to even get that pass that leads to the easy shot. They've got the great shell around the goalie. Goalie's playing great. So yeah, he's right. That's been the tough part, I think, is generating quality scoring chances against this defense.
Andrew John, whether it be a player, whether it be a metric, whether it be a scheme, whether it be something, pardon me, you're seeing on the ice for the Firebirds, what still has you hopeful?
I think the biggest thing that has me hopeful for the Firebirds is that this is a team that in this series hasn't really been massively outplayed. Both teams have, as mentioned previously, have been very, very solid for most of the series. And I think that gives the Firebirds a lot of hope, knowing that they haven't really been massively outplayed in their two losses. They were both close, even though the final score may not have been. And so I think that is a major plus for a team that has also showed that, they can win with their backs against the wall. It's not like they're going into this one knowing they've been in this position, 4 times already this postseason, and now they're playing a team that they know that they can hang with. So I think those are all things, especially for a young team. This is one thing we talk about a lot with the Firebirds, is a very young team. And I think that that's really important for a young team to have that kind of confidence when you're playing a very good team on the road.
Yeah, brief interjection before I turn it back to Kevin. I think the quote that sticks with me most throughout this postseason, the Birds had lost a tough game three at home to Ontario. Jagger just came in the media room and he basically said, going back to Toyota Arena, he's like, I like games like this. It's like you leave everything out there. You don't leave anything in the tank. It didn't seem
Yeah.
like he was sweating it at all. He seemed to kind of relish that opportunity. That stuck with me, and it's shown this 4-0 record for the elimination games thus far. Kevin, inversely, turn it back to you now, sir. What has you concerned right now with the Eagles that they can close this thing out?
I think one of the concerns that maybe has popped up in this series, as opposed to the first two series, where Colorado had some really good success, is the power play. Colorado's not been able to break through on the man advantage in this series against Coachella Valley, and obviously, specialty teams just have this knack of playing big roles in big hockey games, like you're going to have in Game 4 and potentially in a Game 5. So I think Colorado's got to find a way to get some rhythm going. Now, they've been without Jack Ashon, who's been up with the Avalanche. Jack Ashon didn't win the Defenseman of the Year award, the Eddie Shore award, but I think he had every case to be made to win that. I mean, he is that dynamic of a player, and he's a guy that runs that power play. And to not have him, and also to not have your captain so far through the first three games of this series, and Jason Magna, I think has had some impact on that power play. But, for me, I think, Colorado, to be fair, has done a tremendous job up to this point on the penalty kill. So that's been good to see. But if there's one thing that I think has been a concern so far in this series, at least from the Eagles' standpoint, not what Coachella is necessarily throwing at them, but some internal things they need to find any traction so far on the power play.
Shad Powers, akin to yours truly, a little salt and the pepper in that beard. We're sweating out yet another series. What has you worried? What has you concerned about the Firebirds heading into Game 4 Wednesday night?
Yeah, I think I'm a little worried about some of the stars being absent. That's been a problem for the Firebirds. As we said, goals have been hard to come by against Colorado anyway, so you might need some sort of individual special performances. I'm thinking of guys like Logan Morrison. Um, for you mentioned Furcus earlier, just guys that we know can do these things. Um, I'd just like to see, it's time. What I mean? There's no tomorrow. So I think to win both of these games is going to require a few special moments from our top offensive players, and we haven't really seen that much at all in this series. Most of the goals have come on a breakaway or things like that. So, um, you know, we've seen Mitchell Stevens do it recently. Things like that. We just need these guys that have been counted on all year to score, our leading scorers. It's time. You got to make some plays, and I haven't seen much of that. Of course, most of that credit goes to Colorado and their defense, but at the same time, you're the leading scorers for a reason. You have the ability to make plays when they're not there. And need to see a little bit of that, even if it doesn't result in a goal. Some great looks, things like that. I just haven't seen enough of that from the offensive playmakers of the Firebirds.
Yeah, Lomo. We like our Lomo here in the desert, leading scorer this season, but just one goal through 11 playoff games.
Yeah.
Game 4 might be his time to really step up, pop a couple netters. Andrew John, you're a very positive guy by nature, but what's got you worried heading into this fourth game of the series against the Eagles?
Well, I think to Kevin's point, the power play on both sides has really not been there in this series, and I think that that does have me worried for the Firebirds because they've traditionally had a hard time with the power play throughout the season, and then in the postseason they've struggled to win games when not scoring a power play goal. I think they're 2-5 this postseason when they don't score on the power play, and so that's real problematic. They of course have won all their games, all their postseason games when they have scored a power play goal. So Colorado is 90-something% on the PK this postseason, and that's something they really have dialed in. And Firebirds, as good as they have been on the PK, have not quite been as good. They haven't been quite as good as Colorado. So those are all things that are really concerning for the Firebirds because I think they really do need some special teams goals in these next game or two games if it goes to 5 in order to finish to win this series. And right now it's not a lot of optimism that will happen.
Friends, you're tuning in to the Desert Suns Fire and Ice podcast presented by Desert Willow Golf Resort Mid-Series Media Roundtable featuring Andrew John and Shad Powers from the Desert Sun. Joining us from Colorado, the VP of Communications and Broadcasting and the voice of the Eagles, Kevin McGlue. Gents, I want to step back, a little big picture here, if you'll suffer me for a moment. both of these franchises, Firebirds, of course, just in the fourth year, but Colorado, look, hasn't been in the AHL all that long, not since the 2018-2019 season. Eagles are seeking their first appearance in the Western Conference Finals. Birds, we got the banners hanging aloft in Acrisure Arena, but still, of course, seeking that first Calder Cup championship trophy. There's a little playoff history here back to the inaugural season where the Birds were down 1-2, although it was flipped because we had the games coming back to Acrisure Arena. A little bit of an interesting note that a couple players that appeared in that series, still appearing in this series on our side, Gustav Olofsson. John Hayden was also on the roster as Zian McKinnon. He played. Hayden was hurt in that series. McKinnon is hurt now. On the Colorado side, Wyatt Ahmet. I'm going to call him a Duluth, Minnesota native so I can give a little flowers to my alma mater, UMD. He's listed sometimes as Duluth, sometimes as Hermantown. But I just want to kind of give all that context. Both teams and their respective existences, save for the COVID years and those pauses, they've been in the playoffs each year that they've played in the American Hockey League. Kevin, turning it back to you. Does any of this, does all of this, is this a motivator? Does it mean anything? Or are we just looking at what's in front of our face for game four?
Uh, Gosh, I don't know how much of a factor necessarily that plays, but certainly for the fan bases, it's something that has a lot of meaning and would be special. And I know uh, it's been a tremendous accomplishment what Coachella Valley has done so far in a short span in their existence to go and win the Western Conference twice. But I know it's got to be frustrating to get there twice and just come up short. So you want to try to get the monkey off the back. But for Eagles fans, they had great success in the previous two leagues that they were in and had a chance to win two championships in each of those leagues, the Central Hockey League and then the ECHL. And I think that the fans feel like this is potentially a special group that they have right now, and a team that has kind of had to take some lumps. You lose Jack Ashawn with the call up, you lose your captain to injury, and you didn't end up winning a big game against Ontario late in the season to get the Pacific Division title and lock down that home ice advantage. So, you had some battling that you had to do along the way here in the playoffs. But to me, I think that internally and in that room, it is knowing that this is the hardest game to win, an elimination game against the team that has been the most difficult team to put away because nobody's been able to do it here in the playoffs. So I think that there's probably going to be just a sense that, hey, we're going to get the absolute best look that we're going to see all series from Coachella Valley starting on Wednesday night. And there's no question about it. The good news for the Eagles, I think, is, hey, you had to do the same thing against San Diego, and you got a good look from them. And you had to do it against what I thought was a really good Henderson team. And Colorado's in a somewhat similar situation, able to finish off that series against the Silver Knights. So, there's a little context, there's a little experience in being in this role as well as trying to finish a job and to advance from there. So, I think for that player group, they're going to draw on some of that and look at some previous success that they've had. But I think that they're extremely, extremely respectful of their opponents, knowing that they have faced this situation now 4 previous times and no one's been able to get them. And I think you have to respect the heck out of that.
Shad Powers for Bitter or Beather, our Desert and the Firebirds franchise. We remain closely tethered to those banners hanging. And I guess we call them near misses. We could go on and on about that. But are you looking at this from the macro or the micro? And what do you think that this game four means to the franchise as a whole? Or is it something that, like, look, this is what's right in front of our face. Let's try to get to game five.
Yeah, I think I look at it in two ways. Yeah, of course, our fan base is used to deep playoff runs, so in that regard, making the third round is not something that gets everybody excited. But I would say, in my mind, for this year, I kind of feel like, and maybe this is a Pollyanna way to say it, I kind of already feel like we're playing with house money a little bit. I think getting this deep in the playoffs, as far as we already are, has been a great accomplishment for this group. It's farther than I might have expected before the season and even when the playoffs started. So with that sort of feeling like this round has been sort of gravy in a way. I think that helps with I think that's why also why they have a little bit of confidence and a little bit of swagger about themselves in these elimination games is that, I think they're feeling good about that already. They've accomplished more than last year's team. That's always a nice goal. So it's kind of, you're right, it's kind of weird. There's different layers. Our fans have come to expect deep playoff runs, so this is not surprising, and it's, not a reason to celebrate yet. But I think I've been impressed with what this team's already accomplished. So everything they do from moving on will be sort of like cherry on top for me. But all that being said, there's no reason not to keep it going, and they have the ability to do that. And like Kevin said earlier in the podcast, I think whoever emerges from this series will be a totally legitimate contender for the Calder Cup final. And Kevin, we can give you the stat that we always talk about is that the team that knocks the Firebirds out of the playoffs has won every Calder Cup in the Firebirds' existence. So if Colorado were to finish off the series, you can throw that one out there to your listeners. That's a harbinger of a Calder Cup.
I guess I never really even realized that. It's pretty impressive. Yeah, absolutely.
Pressure. Well, pressure's a privilege. Andrew, John, we turn it to you. Looking at it from a couple different lenses: the franchise, the fan base, the media, head coach Derek Laxdal, guys that have been around here a long time every year, John Hayden and so forth. Or is this just game 4 in front of our face?
I think it feels a little bigger than that. I think one thing that is different about covering the American League or following the American League as opposed to the NHL is that that the same group isn't going to be able to run it back next year. Whereas in the NHL, you lose and it's like, well, okay, maybe we got a group that can do it next year. But with the Firebirds and I'm sure with the Eagles as well, you have guys that won't be here next year that are special guys. Guys that come to mind are, Oscar Fisker Molgaard and Jacob Melanson, who both spent a good chunk of the final stretch of the season with the Kraken this year. And I have every expectation that they will start the season with the Kraken next year. Then there's Yanni Newman, who, spent the first half of the season really with the Kraken. There's guys like John Hayden, who are veterans who might not be back next year, who've played an integral role with the Firebirds in 4 years. So that these guys will be moving on most likely at the end of the season. And that is really, I think, a difficult part of following a team that you feel, has a chance to be special, because the feel is going to be different next year. And it's a little somber, to be honest, because guys who Firebirds fans have loved to follow just aren't going to be there. So there will be new guys, but I will say that this is you want to get everything you can out of every group, because that it won't be the same as next year. And I think particularly this group, because this group has been so fun and so special in its own little way.
Fellas, we're going to wrap it up with this one, and I will preface if we're going to get to game 5 and what will happen in game 5, kind of an amalgam preface, if you will. It does concern me a bit that Colorado's top 4 scorers from the regular season, of course, Kevin referenced Jason Megna out, but the other 3 gents, Messrs. Nielsen, Barré-Boulet, and Gushin, have not scored in this series, and yet the Firebirds are trailing 1-2. Turn it back to what Shad Powers said about we need some step up, whether that's like a little more J.R. Avon. We've seen so much. We've seen a lot of greatness from Oscar Fisker Molgaard, some Mitchell Stevens moments. I think we're going to need somebody like that, some individual. I know it's the ultimate team game, but some awesome individual moment, if not moments, to see game 5. The amalgam portion is that I think we will get to that game 5, but harkening back to the history and the context, the Firebirds, as you remember, when we beat Colorado back in 23, then we smoked them in game 5. I think it was a 5-0 shutout. So I think that somewhere in the Loveland, in the Blue Arena vibe, that we're going to get to that game 5, but the gentle sway of the universe, karmically, I think the Eagles are going to advance to their first Western Conference Finals. Kevin McGlue, with that offer, turn it back to you. What do you see in game 4? And if the Firebirds can get it done. What do you see to conclude the series?
Yeah, you know what? As far as game four, I expect more of the same, where these two teams, I think, are both going to come out flying right out of the gates. First 10 minutes should be some really entertaining hockey. Uh, I think what could decide this game is if one of these two teams can actually get a foothold in those first 10 minutes and all of a sudden change the feel of the game moving forward into the second and third period, because it really has been a dogfight where you get to the third period and then you decide who's going to walk away with the win at the end of that night. So, I think if one of these two teams can find a way to get on the board early, can find a way to take a lead into the first intermission and just play some consistent hockey with discipline as well. We talked about some of the power play struggles, but you know how that goes is as soon as you start talking about how neither team is finding much traction on the power play, things break open. So I think it's going to require some discipline as well, which is sometimes a challenge when you're in a highly emotional elimination type game. It's all of a sudden guys start doing things that maybe is a little too far and getting outside of what they traditionally do and do well. And next thing you know, there's a power play that determines the entire game. So I think the winning team is going to have to be disciplined. I think the winning team is probably going to find a way to get on the board. If it's not in the first 10 minutes, then it's in the first period. And I think that's probably going to help dictate a lot of what this game four will be all about.
Shad Powers, will we see a game five? And if so, what will be the outcome?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I've felt like all year, excuse me, and specifically in the playoffs, you can really just throw a net over these top 5 or 6 teams in the Pacific Division. I haven't felt like there's been a big difference. I think these teams are very evenly matched, and so with that in mind, we've seen it all across sports, all of our lifetimes. When one team is in an elimination spot and the other team isn't, there's just a human nature that takes over where that desperation somehow leads you to a win. So with that in mind, I will take the Firebirds in game four. But it's not going to be easy, and I have been impressed by Colorado's ability to close out series. As we talk about the Firebirds' ability to stay alive, what about the Eagles' ability to close out and not even get to those winner take all games? That's been impressive about their playoff run so far. So they've got the makeup to do that, certainly. But I think it's going to go to game five, and then I think I agree with you, Judd. If it does go to game five, even though the Firebirds have shown a lot of fortitude there, I think it's just you can't stretch that so thin every time. It's not just gonna, and Colorado, I think, is the best team they've played so far, even better than Ontario. So I'm gonna say it does go to game five, but I agree. I think it's gonna be a Colorado, finally pulling the rug out from under the Firebirds and walking away with a game five win and moving on.
Andrew John, we're going to wrap it up with you, sir. Your prediction.
Yeah, I do think Colorado wins the series. I will say I do think Firebirds will take this game four. But it is going to be so tough. I wouldn't be surprised if Colorado finished it out. I will say that, we've talked a little bit about how the Firebirds will be playing with some desperation, and that gives them an advantage. Well, think about the Eagles. They're going to be playing with some desperation too, because they don't want this to go to game five, where it's kind of puts them in a much more vulnerable position. So I think it's going to be a very entertaining game, very physical. I think that what the Firebirds need to do is set the tone with the physicality early in the game if they can, because that's something that they didn't do in game one. And John Hayden specifically mentioned that was a regret that they had in game one, is that they came out kind of not as physical and aggressive as they should have. And that allowed Colorado to really dictate the pace of the game and control much of the game. And that's something that the Firebirds can't allow in game four if they want to win.
Gentlemen, so much appreciation for your time. And John Shad Powers from the Desert Sun, and Kevin McGlue joining us, the voice of the Colorado Eagles. Good luck all the way around, fellas. Let's see how this thing shakes out.
All right. Thanks, Judd.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, Firebirds flock. It's going to wrap it up for this special playoff episode, Mid-Series Media Roundtable. of the Desert Suns Fire and Ice podcast, presented by Desert Willow Golf Resort. So appreciative of your time, your interest, your ears, your ongoing support of this endeavor. Gratitude goes to this episode's guests, Media Roundtable guests, Andrew John and Shad Powers from the Desert Sun. Follow all their work, all their Firebirds coverage, much, much more at desertsun.com. Kevin McGlue, appreciate Kevin's time. Kevin, of course, VP of Communications and Broadcasting and the play-by-play voice for the Colorado Eagles. Kevin's call coming up, of course, this Wednesday night, Game 4. Birds versus Eagles, Blue Arena in Loveland, Colorado. That takes place 6:05 Pacific time. Game 5, asterisk, if needed and necessary. Deciding Game 5 would take place also in Loveland, Colorado, Blue Arena. Birds at Eagles, 6:05 Pacific time, puck drop. Additional thanks, of course, goes to the presenting sponsor of this endeavor, Desert Willow Golf Resort, also right here in sunny Palm Desert, California. That's where you tee up at the Mountain View. It's where you play the Fire Cliff course. You get those tee times online at desertwillow.com. Be sure to check out the awesome, excellent, and on-site Palm Desert Golf Academy. When you're poking around at Desert Willow, that's home to all your swing, knowledge, education, tutelage, and instructional needs. Again, writer's note, recorder's note, host note, be mindful when making those tee times at Desert Willow this week, as they are hosting, for the first time ever west of Texas, the Women's D3 National Golf Championships. Sponsor of our Firebirds Freeze Frame segment, so great to have them on board this season, both the Ground Squirrel and the 29 Palms Beer Company. You can find them yonder high desert up in the 29 Palms. Those are your high desert hockey homes. Don't forget 29 Palms Beer Company. They're brewing up their own phenomenal beers right on site. Great place to kick back, have a homemade brew. They're televising every Firebirds regular season and playoff game, whether it be home or away. So you're looking to watch on Wednesday night? Yeah, we've got the team watch parties that take place here on the desert floor, or as we say in the business, the low desert, I guess. But you want to go check it out. An especially unique place, really tasty food, really tasty beers. Go watch with your friends at the 29 Palms Beer Company. Probably get dinner at the Ground Squirrel first. What a great potent power play. All right, dudes, will there be more games to watch at Acrisure Arena this season? Will there be more episodes of the Fire and Ice podcast? That all remains to be seen. We'll find out, see if the Birds can stave off elimination for a 5th consecutive time in these Calder Cup playoffs this Wednesday night. And then hopefully we got something to cheer for. Hopefully we got something to watch. Hopefully we got something to root for and fly forward with the deciding Game 5 Friday night in Colorado. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. And as always, be well.